You got to like the way I operate. I make miracles happen just for rapping. I'm so lyrically potent, and I'm floating and exploding.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Obviously, great show ahead for you guys. Obviously, okay. So I'm gonna get right into it today. Get started. First of all, here's probably my favorite fact of the day. We got a study out called "Building a Better America: One Wealth Quintile at a Time." It's from Dan Ariely of Duke University and Michael Norton of Harvard Business School. And what they did was they asked Americans, what percentage of the wealth in this country do you think is controlled by the top 20%? And then they asked them, what percentage of the wealth do you think should be controlled by the top 20%? Those are very interesting questions and very interesting answers, and also the reality is also interesting. So now, when asked, hey, what percentage of the wealth do you think the top 20% actually control? The American people guess about 59%. Now that's a big number, but when they asked them, this is interesting. All this, this country that believes in, hey, American spirit, who cares? The rich to rise to the top. We don't need no stinking redistribution of wealth, etc. Now that's what the conservatives would have us believe. We're a very center-right country, individualistic, don't believe in income equality overall. That's what Fox News tells me every day. How much should the top 20% have of the country as a percentage of wealth? The American people, on average, including Republicans, all different demographic groups were polled here. And it was a large sample size, over 5,000. In a poll that's a very, very large number, representative of the country. What percentage of the wealth should the top 20% control? 32%. So, apparently, the American people think that the top 20% should have about half of the percentage of income they think that they actually have, right? So they think that there should be massive redistribution of wealth, so the top 20% don't have anywhere near the amount that they have. Now, if you've noticed, I haven't told you what the real number is yet. I've told you what they think it should be and what they think it is. Anybody want to guess along with me? What percentage of the wealth does the top 20% in this country actually control? 84%. So that you thought it was a high number with 59%. That's what Americans thought, right? No, 84%. So apparently the American people want massive, colossal redistribution of wealth. So what Fox News tells you about, center-right, no way, redistribution of wealth is Marxist, etc. Total and utter nonsense. Does not jive with what the American people think at all. Okay. And, I think that I looked at the way that they did this poll. I think it's an excellent poll. And so I would welcome anyone to try to duplicate it. My guess is you're going to find very, very similar answers. Okay, now, what do I think? I actually think 32% is too low. The funny thing is, I'm to the right of the country. Now, I've told you this before. In reality, I'm a moderate, right? And in reality, I'm more conservative sometimes than the average American in this country on certain issues. Now, this Washington, D.C., the media and the politicians have become so insane that they consider me way left, right? So far to the left of Obama, they don't know how to track it, right? But the reality is I'm actually a little to the right of the country. I think 32% is a very low number for the top 20%. Obviously, wealth is going to be concentrated at the upper brackets. I get that. That's part of capitalism. In order to stop that, you'd have to have real significant redistribution of wealth and incredibly high taxes. Sweden, which actually is socialist, and socialist is such a weird, funny word, because the question is, what percentage of the economy should the government control? What sectors should they be in? What sectors should they not be in? Those are all open questions. So calling any country socialist is a little weird, right? And certainly inexact. But that being said, Sweden controls a much larger sector of their economy with their government. Their government is involved in more sectors, for example, healthcare, right? And here, of course, our right wing says, Sweden, socialist, disaster. Even in Sweden, the top 20% only control 36% of the wealth. So that's still higher than what the average American thinks is ideal. Now, I don't want to go all the way to Sweden. I'm not that far left. I'm just not. And there's good arguments to be made for it, and I'd love to have those arguments on the show. But so I guess I want it to be higher than 36%. But when they tell you we're a center-right country, or when they tell you talk about Marxist or this or that, and Obama wants to redistribute wealth, well, actually, if Americans understood what that meant and knew the numbers behind it, apparently they want to redistribute wealth 1,000,000 times more than Obama does. So that's the reality in the country. Don't believe the hype about what the right-wingers tell you. All right, speaking of which, coming in here, I opened the radio for like 2 minutes, okay? And Tom makes me, Hammering Tom Hank, makes me listen to conservative radio when I'm in the car, just to get my blood boiling, right? And it's an effective strategy. It literally was listening to Sean Hannity for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Two things happened in that 2-minute stretch. One, he started talking about, he was in the middle of a rant about how we shouldn't help the rest of the world at all. Of course, right? Oh, trying to help the rest of the people, that's a terrible idea. It just makes them lazy. No, we shouldn't give them any aid. And next thing you know, they're going to want a global tax or something and try to get some of our wealth. No way, right? Okay, great. Congratulations, right? No, don't help anybody. What a great Christian you are, right? All right, and then a caller calls in and says, come on now, Christine O'Donnell, how can you support her? Bound's the reason, right? And Hannity says, no. Did you know her opponent is a Marxist? These guys are lunatics, man. Marxist. Marxist? Sweden, which is, as I just explained, far more socialist than us, is nowhere near Marxism. Not even within 100 miles of Marxism. And they think the Democratic candidates in America, which are way to the right of the center of our country, let alone Europe, let alone the political spectrum from capitalism to Marxism, that they're Marxist? Oh, come on. Please. They are not related to reality, these folks. All right, now, on that point, or a similar point, I should say, you know, the Republicans' main thing on tax cuts is we need to make sure that the top 2% get those tax cuts, because they need to have a higher percentage of wealth in this country, because they're the job creators and they're the small business. Now, we've already showed you that, in fact, the tax cuts for the rich went to investment abroad over the last 10 years. And $1.9 trillion went to investment abroad. Now, that might make economic sense for the people who are doing that, but it certainly doesn't create jobs at home. I've shown you number after number about how the jobs are not created when you give tax cuts to the rich. I've shown you numbers about economic multipliers, which show you that tax cuts for the rich is the worst multiplier effect for the economy, because they save it largely or they invest it abroad, and it does not come back into the American economy. And the Republicans have admitted, even John Boehner said, yes, okay, only 3% of small businesses would be affected by maintaining the Bush tax cuts for the richest people in America, okay? So what's left for the Republicans? But they say, but of the 3% of small businesses that are affected, God, they are such great American job creators and, you know, entrepreneurs, and boy, they do such a great job of being small businesses in the country. Now, if their personal income is above $250,000, how small is their business? I don't know. It could be pretty small, but there's a range, right? Of course, what have the Republicans done? In their definition of small businesses, they have included everyone under the sun, just to make it seem like a broader category. We covered this earlier in the week when Bloomberg News reported, according to their definition, all the Hollywood stars are small businesses. Brad Pitt's a small business. Barack Obama's a small business. 21 million people who are in that, who are in their mind considered a small business, or in their categorization called a small business, actually employ 0 people, right? So Bloomberg already reported on that. Yeah, and last night Keith Olbermann reported on MSNBC and found all other so-called small businesses that meet the Republican definition. One of them is a tiny little company you might recognize called Bechtel. You want to know how much Bechtel earned last year? The revenue they had? $31 billion. That's a small business. Come on, right? And that's not $31 billion in assets. That's $31 billion in revenue last year. Okay, and then there are other small businesses like this propane company called Feral Gas. Their revenue last year was $2 $2 billion. Then there's PricewaterhouseCoopers. There's a private equity firm of Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts, and they are also enormous. These poor hedge fund guys, they're small businesses that need a tax break. They're the job creators of this country. It's one lie after another, okay? And by the way, you know who else is a so-called small business? Of course, the Koch brothers, the guys that fund conservative think tanks and causes to the tune of literally hundreds of millions of dollars. They are, according to the Republicans, a small business. Do you know that they're among the top 5 wealthiest people in the country? Top 5. Top 5. Okay? A small business, poor Koch brothers. If you tax them anymore, they won't be able to give to the Heritage Foundation and the Cato Institute and to John Boehner and Mitch McConnell. Poor Koch brothers. That's a small business. They create jobs. By the way, of course, how many jobs did Koch Industries create last year? Anybody want to take a guess? If you guess 0, you were too generous. They cut 118 jobs. Job creators. One lie after another. Okay. Now, speaking of which, let's talk about this for a second, right? So the logic of the Republicans is, if you give tax cuts to small businesses, they will create more jobs, okay? Now, I have argued in the past that the opposite is true. So let's think through the logic for a second, okay? And I've shown numbers to back that up. When you raise taxes, investment in the country and in our business sectors actually grow, employment grows. When you cut taxes, the opposite happens. It's a historical trend. I have shown it to you over and over. Look at my Dylan Ratigan segments, look at the TYT segments. Now, why? What's the logic behind it, okay? Now, we actually here at Young Turks are a small business. And so let's pretend we had a profit this year, okay? And let's call that profit $100,000, just to keep even round numbers, right? Now, if our tax rate, first of all, let's separate 2 different things. This is very important. Now, we're talking about personal income tax here, right? Because if it's a corporate tax, and if we're a giant corporation here, that's different anyway. That's a corporate tax. But let's assume that TYT is a partnership, and so whatever profit we make goes straight into, and let's keep it simple here, my pocket, okay? So let's see how this would play out, right? It's an interesting exercise. So let's say TYT was going to make a $100,000 profit. And my tax rate, which is right now, the Republicans want it to be between 15 and 20%. Of course, they would prefer even lower, 15%, right? But let's say 20% because Obama wants to raise the dividend rate and the capital gains rate to 20%. Now, these are all different categories, but again, I want to try to keep it simple. So let's just say 20%, okay? If it was at 20%, well then, okay, then I would get to take home $80,000. And I'd be taxed at $20,000, right? If the rate was at 40%, okay, which is the rate I think it makes sense, which is the top bracket, et cetera, right? And again, at $100,000, you wouldn't be in the top bracket, but I'm trying to keep things simple, right? So, well, then I would only get to take home $60,000, right? So I'm thinking, wait a minute, if I'm going to lose $40,000 to the U.S. government, wouldn't I have an incentive to spend as much money as possible before I have to pay those taxes? Spend it in my business. Can you follow me here? I'm not sure if I'm said it very awfully clearly, but the bottom line is, if the taxes are higher, it gives me an incentive to plow my whatever revenue, extra revenue we might have, back into the business, because I don't want to lose it in taxes. If the taxes are really low, I think, well, all right, I lose the $20,000, but I get to take $80,000 home. Let's say taxes were 80%, right, since these are all hypotheticals. Now, if the government was going to take 80% of our revenue, we would never report any revenue. We would immediately hire somebody else. We'd get new equipment. We'd invest it back into the business because we'd be mental to give 80% away to the government. I'm keeping it real. I'm an entrepreneur, right? So do you see that if the taxes are higher, you have a much higher incentive as a small business owner to put it back into your business? Now, that's logic, and any small business owner knows this. My dad's known it for his whole life when he was a small business owner. I know it as a small business owner. You ask anybody in the country, they know it. So when the Republicans tell you, oh, no, if we lower their taxes, they'll have more incentive to hire people, that makes no sense whatsoever. And they know it. It's just their excuse to get more tax cuts to Coke Industries, to Bechtel, to the richest people in the country who give them campaign donations. I mean, as always, what drives me crazy is that, okay, look, we have a bunch of liars in this one political party. It's not like the other political party doesn't lie, right? But you should expose everybody's lies. But one party has made a profession out of it, right? And their obsession with giving more money to the top 2% of this country is wholly unjustifiable by any reason that they have used, any logic or any numbers or facts. So it would be the job of the media to say, hey, you know what? That's just not true. Unfortunately, we have a media that is so scared of its own shadow that they're like, well, the Democrats say this, the Republicans say that. The Republicans say that tax cuts will create more jobs, even though none of the numbers bear that out. Of course, they will never say that last part because that would be biased to actually give you real facts. Well, don't worry. Luckily, you got us. Young Turks.
And it's a sad, sad world.
All right, back on the Young Turks. What is that, Amy Winehouse? No? Go ahead. Educate. Fiona.
Fiona Apple.
Okay. There it is. Now, so what do we have in this segment? Wonderful, rich Republican hypocrisy, as always. So the GOP decided they were going to do something called a Pledge to America, and that is, and they've unveiled that today. And that's their promise to America if they re-win the House, the Senate, etc. Now, the way they gathered ideas for that, it was actually very good. It was, very grassroots, actually net roots in a lot of ways. It's called America Speaking Out, and they solicited advice, and apparently 1 million different people, or they got 1 million comments on it from a great number of people. Fantastic. They're using the internets, the series of tubes that Ted Stevens talked about, and they're reaching out to American people. Now, it's their own folks, and they might come up with some crazy ideas, but hey, it's a step in the right direction, right? A little bit more accountability. Well, the thing that came in number one, the issue that came in number one was actually very good. See, that's why if you actually ask people, you might be surprised what they get. And as we've told you on a number of issues, the Republican voters are actually not with the Republican politicians. So what came in number one? It was to make sure that we do not give any more tax breaks to companies that are outsourcing jobs. Now, we're not preventing them from outsourcing jobs. It's a free country. It's a free world. But we just don't want to give them tax breaks or tax incentives to encourage that. Now, that came in number one because it makes so much sense. I think Democrats can agree to that. Republicans can agree to that. So we'll probably get this thing done, right? Because it came in number one for the Republicans. And the Republican Party had originally been in favor of that proposal. And guess what? The Democrats are now introducing a bill that would do exactly that, okay? No, if you create jobs here in the U.S., the jobs that used to be abroad but are now relocated to the U.S., we're going to give you tax breaks. But if you're taking jobs that used to be in the U.S. and exporting them outside, we're not going to give you tax breaks. Come on, who's going to disagree with that, right? Of course, you know who, right? The Republican Party. Totally against it, and will be obstructing it and blocking it to make sure it doesn't happen. It's number one on your agenda, according to your voters. What happened? Oh, no, not buying it. Now, why? Because that would hurt the real constituency of Republican politicians, the richest people and corporations in the country. Oh, no, you can't touch those corporations. I need to give them more of your tax breaks. I don't care if they hire anywhere else as long as they contribute to me. Perfect example, Representative Brady. It's Kevin Brady, a Republican of Texas, and somebody's going to ask him on camera about it, and his answer is awesome. Let's watch.
As of last week, I don't know the exact date, but the second highest idea voted up by popular vote was to end tax breaks for companies that ship jobs overseas. Do you expect something like that to be included with the new contract that's unveiled tomorrow?
I haven't seen what. Can you tell me what exactly that tax provision is? Because right now, the ones we've seen from the Democrats in the White House actually penalize U.S. companies trying to sell and compete overseas. So they do just the opposite. These tax breaks that they're trying to supposedly reform actually ships our jobs overseas if the president succeeds. So I think they're
total nonsense.
They're very ignorant about how the tax code hurts us as we try to compete.
So you think that some form of that, just different than what the Democrats have proposed, will be in the proposal tomorrow?
I think our proposal is going to be, how do you create the strongest economy in the world? And how does America continue to lead for the next 100 years? And all that has to do with lower taxes, more opportunities, especially in small business.
Ha ha! There you go. So first, the person doing the interview there for Think Progress said it was the second highest priority. This morning, it had shot up to number one. Okay, so and then he was asking him yesterday, do you think it'll be revealed today that will be part of your pledge to America, since it's coming in the top two at that time, right? And of course, he said, no, it will not be in our pledge. And then he said, oh, no, the Democrats, what they're proposing is totally the opposite. They're trying to, did you notice what he said? He said they're trying to hurt companies that are trying to sell and compete overseas. In other words, companies that send jobs overseas, they're trying to hurt them, right? No, they're not trying to hurt them. They just don't want to give them tax breaks to hire overseas because we want them hiring over here. So do you get the duplicity there? Right? And then he's like, so it would totally hurt, and then at the end, we'd have more people hired overseas. Why? Based on what logic? Not based on your logic. And at the end, he told you, of course, what his real plan is. Quote, all that has to do is lower taxes. The one and only priority for Republicans. Lower taxes for our really, really rich friends and corporations. And by the way, the Pledge to America was unveiled today. It did not have that provision that was, at this point, number one among their voters, their constituents, their voters, and their readers, okay? Not only did it not have it, guess what the main policy proposal was? Now, if you can't guess this, you just haven't been following along. Of course, it was to cut taxes for everybody, including, and most especially, top 2% of the country and multinational corporations, no matter where they ship the jobs. Republicans, pathetic. Okay, so that's issue number one. Now, issue number two is, what are the Republicans going to do to implement their ideas if they gain control of the House and perhaps the Senate? Well, I know one thing that Representative Ryan, who would actually be the head of the House Committee on the Budget, he will not do this. He will not do reconciliation. Because he was very clear on the record, because when the Democrats did it to pass health care, he was livid. Now, earlier, Republicans had done it under Bush to pass the record-breaking tax cuts, but that was easily forgotten. When the Democrats did it for health care, it was, well, I'll give you the exact quotes. He called the reconciliation process, quote, a convoluted legislative charade, okay? He said that the Democrats, employing any means to achieve political victory, used reconciliation. Any means to achieve political victory. That was on March 14th of 2010. But Representative Paul Ryan also said that reconciliation was a, quote, an extraordinary and unprecedented abuse of the system. Wow, strong. And he said, again, this is on March 15th of 2010. He said, never before has the House committee process been so grossly exploited. And he also said a couple of days later, this is not good democracy. This is not good government. So there's no way Representative Ryan, if he were to be the head of that committee, would use reconciliation, right? Well, why don't we ask him? Larry Kudlow on CNBC asked him that very question. Curious to see what the answer is.
Congressman, I know you're going to be chairman of the Budget Committee if the GOP wins the House. That puts you in charge of the reconciliation process, which is a very important task. Can you use reconciliation to chip away and gradually roll back some of the unpopular Obama policies? Will that be the strategy?
Yes, you can. It's then a question of where Judd works and where he sits. The question is, who controls the Senate and where are the votes in the Senate? Reconciliation is the fastest, best path to get there. We do want to use reconciliation. You ultimately have to use reconciliation to get this problem fixed.
All of a sudden, yes, you can. All of a sudden, as soon as they're in charge,
Hell no, you can't!
has turned into, of course you can. What are you talking about? It's the fastest and best way to get the results. Don't you know that? Paul Ryan's been saying that for the last minute and a half. When he found out he might be the head of the Budget Committee, he said, that's the effective way to go. Their hypocrisy knows no bounds. You could fill up this planet and this galaxy with their hypocrisy. And Larry Kudlow doesn't break a sweat that he's going to go to a Republican in the Senate, Judd Gregg, who of course hated reconciliation, was outraged that the Democrats did reconciliation. What does he think? I mean, obviously he's not going to be for reconciliation. Let's see.
Is Paul Ryan right? Is that an effective tool to gradually change the direction of policies with Congress essentially determining the purse strings?
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely, of course. If we're in charge, we get to use that all day long. And by the way, you know what reconciliation is, right? That's when you only need 51 votes. So because in the Senate right now, the Republicans are blocking everything, right? So you need 60, you need 60. All of a sudden, filibuster everything, right? But as soon as the Republicans come in charge, of course you don't need 60. Reconciliation, absolutely. 51 votes and we're done. Just like that, man, on a dime. Amazing. They have no conscience. The quotes I read you are from earlier this year. They're from like less than 6 months ago. It's as if he never said them. As if he was never outraged by reconciliation. Now, of course, the other question is the media going to let him get away with it? My guess is, unfortunately, absolutely. They will turn on a dime and they will say, well, obviously everything has to pass through reconciliation if they get control of the Senate, right? And the media will start writing, everything must pass through reconciliation. It's the fastest, best, most effective way to do it. It is the most common way. Watch. I mean, hopefully we won't get to that because hopefully they won't get the Senate. But if they ever do, you can see it for yourself right there. It's a guarantee. Jack.
You forgot about the part where they'll add on because of the obstructionists in the Democratic Party.
Right, of course. See, because they're obstructing our path. Because the Republicans, they never obstructed anything. Like the proposal to stop giving tax breaks to ship jobs overseas. They just obstructed that, even though they claimed it was originally their idea and their number one priority. Huh. It's kind of weird, JR. Oh, politics. You see, it can be fun. So, now speaking of fun and politics, obviously we've got to go to Sharon Angle. Sharon Angle is sick of the entitlement mentality that we have in this country and all these government programs. Half of them are unconstitutional. She's going to tell us exactly how far she'd be willing to go to cut these programs. Just a quick little note here from her. Let's listen to a Tea Party rally she was at last year.
The second one is take off the mandates for coverage in the state of Nevada and all over the United States. But here, you know what I'm talking about. You're paying for things that you don't even need. They just passed, the latest one is everything that they want to throw at us now is covered under autism. So that's a mandate that you have to pay for. How about maternity leave? I'm not going to have any more babies, but I sure get to pay for it on my insurance. Those are the kinds of things that we want to get rid of.
Yeah, well, that's true. She's being honest with you. So, you know, normally the way healthcare insurance works is we all put into a pool in case any of us get sick, right? And now, hopefully, like if you're younger, for example, but you don't get sick, right? Right? But you put it in there just in case you do. That's why it's called insurance, right? And you know, hopefully you have perfectly healthy kids. But there's some chance you might have autistic kids, in which case you might need a little extra help. That's why you buy healthcare insurance. But according to Sharon Angle, these kids that are autistic. Now, I'd love to run that by Sarah Palin, see what she thinks of that. Because I remember how outraged she was when Rahm Emanuel called somebody, you know, retarded. Okay, now here's this woman saying, we shouldn't be covering autistic kids. You got autistic kids, that's your problem, that's not my problem. And, oh, you're having kids, period? Hey, man, I'm past that time. I already had my kids, and they already got paid for. That's your problem, not my problem. Oh, great. So we, apparently, according to her, health insurance shouldn't cover maternity leave. Can it cover hospital stay, or no? That's your kids, not my kids, man. If you want to have kids, yeah, I should bankrupt you. I thought you were pro-life. Okay, what? Misses the whole point of insurance, right? And so, look, if this is the kind of extremism that you like, and you think no one should ever be covered for anything, and it should be the law of the jungle, and if you're having kids, good luck. If you got autistic kids, good luck to you. Here's a couple of bootstraps. But if I'm really rich, oh, I already paid for my stuff, and I already took advantage of stuff, and I'm keeping it. And there's some folks like that, and they're all, well, I probably think 99.8% of those are Republicans. Well, then you're going to vote for Sharon Angle. If you're one of the people who think, hey, you know what? Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it makes sense for us to pool together to help each other out, whether it's insurance, whether it's the government, paying for cops, firemen. Is she in favor of that? I don't know. I mean, she's so off the deep end, I'm not positive. She thinks everything is unconstitutional. So, look, if you're part of those people who think that, hey, yeah, we can get together and sometimes provide for each other, then I guess you're not interested in Sharon Angle. On the other hand, if you're against her, you're probably a lazy bum, unemployed guy who doesn't want to get a job. One more thing on that. You know, we covered that earlier. Sharon Angle and some other Republicans have said that if we give them unemployment benefits, it will only encourage their laziness, right? Well, unemployment was at 4% at some point, right? A couple of years back. Now it's at 10%. Did 6% of the country all of a sudden get lazy? And I wonder what that, epidemic was about. I'd like to ask them. Was there some triggering event that all of a sudden 6% of the workforce was like, screw it, I'm going to take a load off. Somebody get me a beer. I'm living off unemployment from now on. Or could it be that hardworking Americans lost their jobs? For example, in manufacturing, because we've lost our manufacturing base. That they might have worked 20, 30, 40 years and then get the rug pulled out from underneath them. And they're having trouble finding a new job since they've been doing that and paying their dues and doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing as good Americans. Is that a possibility? No. Bums. I know. Well, look, again, if you believe that, you vote for Sharon Angle and the Republicans. Okay. Now, I've got a lot on John Boehner. He's introduced this pledge. I'm going to come back and tell you about it, but you know what? Here, I'll squeeze in a John Boehner story for you here. It's because it doesn't have anything to do with politics, it's just fun. He was getting a lot of crap for his tan, right? So they asked him about it, and he said, I assure you that I have, this reminds me of Larry Craig's pledge. I am not gay and I have never been gay. John Boehner said, I have never been on a tanning bed nor used any tanning products. Okay. And he says that he has a natural glow to his skin, as do a lot of people in his family. He said his mom has it, and 4 out of his 12 siblings also have that naturally sun-kissed look. And he added, oh, by the way, that's because people don't see me riding my bike or mowing the lawn as I did over the weekend. You know what John Boehner does instead and why he does have that perpetual tan? And why he might not be using any tanning products. And I didn't know this fact until Ed Schultz revealed it. Last year alone, he went on 119 golf outings. Every time I say that, it blows me away. How can you do that, man? That's exhausting. I don't even think that's fun. Okay? I mean, that's literally like once every 3 days in the year. You're like, okay, no, hold up everything. I got to go play 18 holes. Well, yeah, if you were out in the sun for 18 holes every third day, you'd always have a tan. It's tough being John Boehner. All right, come back. We'll do some substance on him. And then I got to get to the general standing up to Obama in a terrible way. Bob Woodward's book. The book is interesting. The result is disastrous. Come right back, Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. So the Republicans have finally revealed their pledge to America. You're going to be shocked at what's in it. Boy, it is chock full of new ideas. And they have figured out a way to get jobs going in the country with a bold new gambit I would not have expected. I'm going to let John Boehner take it away from here. Let's go to clip number 8.
The American people are speaking out like never before. They're concerned about the future of our nation and the future for their children. And they see a government in Washington that isn't listening, doesn't get it, and frankly, the American people think that Washington doesn't really care. We're here today to put forth a new governing agenda built by listening to the American people that offers a new way forward. Before I served in Congress, I ran a small business. And I learned firsthand how government gets in the way of job creation in our country. The policies coming out of Washington are creating massive uncertainty for job creators, and the American people are suffering as a result. In order to create jobs, we need to end the uncertainty for job creators, end the spending spree in Washington, and reform Congress itself. Government is out of control in Washington, and we need to rein it in and begin a new drive for a smaller, less costly, and more accountable government in our nation's capital. These are the things that the American people are demanding. And our pledge to America is that the Republicans stand ready to get it done, and beginning today. You know,
wow! I didn't see it coming. It turns out here are the main planks of the pledge. Cut taxes. Who isn't tired yet? A smaller government, but they say that generically. Like, so what are you going to cut? Nah, we'll get to that later. Okay. Number three, I should say, increase defense spending. So that doesn't really lead to a smaller government, but the defense contractors, to be fair, give a lot of money to the Republican Party. Okay. And then number four, less spending. So that seems like smaller government. They're just duplicating it. And is it really true? No, they're going to give more spending to their friends, more tax cuts to their friends. The budget's going to be in worse shape. It's certainly going to have a $700 billion hole in it when they give more tax cuts to the rich. It doesn't really have to make much sense. All you have to do is go out there, taxes. So was there anything to address jobs? Like, how would you create jobs? I'm tired of it. I'm actually going to move on. You know what the answer is, right? 2 words. Tax cuts. No specific proposal. None. Just if we magically give more tax cuts to the richest people in the country, well, then we will have more jobs. Well, despite the fact that we did that under Bush and lost initially 8 million jobs, now we've recovered some, so it's 7.3 million. Okay, so that's another brilliant idea the Republicans want to bring you. As frustrated as I get with the Democrats, the Republicans present absolutely, positively no alternative. They're the Democrats' best friend. I told you that poll at the end of yesterday's show. According to the last poll, only 30% of the country think that the Democrats in Congress should be reelected. It's a terrible number. You know what percentage should think the Republicans should be reelected? 20%. Okay. We got dumb and evil, and we're supposed to pick between the two. Now, I just called the Democrats dumb. Why? Well, here, we'll give you the 20 billionth example in a row. So they have this ability before the elections to put up a bill that says, hey, this bill will give tax cuts to 98% of us, to the middle class, to everybody, okay? The top 2%, though, will not retain the tax cuts that they got under Bush, right? Now, we showed you polling on this earlier. That's polls excellent with the American people. It has a 17-point advantage overall. It has a 17-point advantage among independents. If you say, hey, you know what, we'll take the extra couple of percent we get from the wealthiest brackets and apply it to create more jobs and to cut the deficit, then a majority of Republicans, 55% of Republicans say, I'm on board, okay? So it's an indisputably winning issue for the Democrats. So what are they going to do? You know it, right? Today they folded up camp. They said, nope, we're not going to put any tax bill up. Why? Because they're scared. But they literally say it. They say, well, you know, some of us are in tough elections, and if we put up a tax bill, even though the Republicans are totally wrong on it, all they need to do is get one small business owner. I'm quoting here, okay? So they just need to get one small business owner and put them in an ad and say that, oh, my God, the Democrats raised my taxes, and then we'll lose. Well, you'll lose if you're pathetically weak, yes. If you don't make a counter-argument, yeah, you'll lose. But you'll lose no matter what you do if you plan not on making your own case. If you plan on going into the election going like this, well, then you lose, obviously, right? You'll lose no matter what the issues are. How about you put the bill up and then you run the ads saying, Republicans just filibustered this bill. They're holding the middle class hostage. They just voted against middle class tax cuts. They voted against tax cuts for 98% of us because they had to help their rich buddies. Crazy idea, I know. Like if you told a Democrat, his head would probably explode. He'd be like, oh, really? Can we run that ad? Yes, you clown. You can run that ad. And you would crush with that ad. That would be That would be a game changer. But what do they do today? They gave the Queen away. They gave it away. They said, oh my God, it's before an election. Do you remember what the Republicans did before elections? For example, before the 2002 elections, Bush came out and said, this is our time. Democrats will be scared before an election, so this is the time to push all the bills, to push the tax cuts, but in that case, mainly the war authorization. And they said to the Democrats, if you don't vote for our bill, we will say you're weak on defense. And the Democrats are like, oh, it's before an election, I'll vote yes, I'll vote yes. So before an election, if the Republicans are in charge, they pass all the bills. If the Democrats are in charge, they don't put up any bills. They're like, oh, no, the Republicans will attack. I mean, come on, how do I not call them pushovers? It takes every, bit of my strength to not finish that thought. Okay, come on. They suck at this game. Their only advantage is that their opponents are so heinous, despicable, obvious, and brazen that nobody in the country can stomach voting for them. So they won in 06 and 08 because we're like, oh my God, George Bush has destroyed the country through the wars, through the tax cuts, through the economic crash. Okay, this is what I think of the Republicans. I guess I'll vote Democrat. But if it wasn't for that, if the Republicans were even like a party not that's even competent, but just not insane, if the Republican Party stepped out of the lunatic asylum, they have crushing victories. Crushing. Because these Democrats don't know a thing about politics. Now, to be fair here, in this case, the White House is on the right side, okay? The White House is saying, no, let's push forward. They've shown to the senators the same polls that I've been telling you about, and they're saying, hey, we can win on this one. Give credit to the White House. They're on the right side. The Senate Democrats, and look, that gives you a sense, right? So because a lot of the complaints that people had was, hey, I'm too tough on Obama because in healthcare reform and financial reform, he has to deal with the Senate Democrats as they are, and they're not an easy bunch, etc. No. You see, if it had gone down like this, I wouldn't be all over the White House. If they actually tried, like they are on this issue, and they actually tried to push forward real reform on healthcare or finance, and then the Senate Democrats blocked it, then I wouldn't say a word about the White House. I'd say, all right, well, the White House gave it a shot, and the idiot Senate Democrats blocked it. Then I'd apportion the blame there, but they didn't. You see the difference? In this case, they did. Give them credit. Senate Democrats. Is there anything like more pathetic in the country? Okay, by the way, one more note on this. I'm running out of time. I didn't even get to Woodward. We'll do it in the third hour. Joe Biden attacked the Republican Party as the Republican Tea Party, right? Other Democrats are telling him, hey, please don't do that. That's not nice. You don't want to attack the other side. I got to stop doing this show, man. I mean, what's the point? If the Republicans are so terrible and the Democrats are so pathetic and sad, what's the point, right? Well, you're the opposition party. You're supposed to make the case against the other guys. You're not supposed to be their bitch. You're not supposed to be their gimp. All he said was that it's the Republican Tea Party. He didn't even say anything bad. Ben Nelson's out. Other Senate Democrats are out saying, "Oh, please don't be disrespectful. We're so sorry. We're so sorry about our friend. We're so sorry about Joe Biden. I can't believe he was disrespectful about that." And and we think the Tea Party people are just gorgeous people. They are the great Americans voicing their opinions, etc. What am I going to do? All right, let's come back and do an hour where we do fun news, because this stuff is depressing. Young Turks.